steps to disrupt and discredit the use of cryptocurrencies, I'd like to call the leader of proposition to start the debate.
Okay, I'll be like, give me like 10 seconds. I'll be starting at the self count of 3, 2, and 1. Greetings, I'm Anna Rajput. I'm the first speaker of proposition, the PM. Today, the motion for this debate is that this House believes that governments should take public steps to disrupt and discredit the use of cryptocurrencies. Firstly, I'll be explaining the motion. The motion basically speaks of cryptocurrencies. A cryptocurrency is a digital currency which is an alternative from a payment created by using algorithms like that stuff. It's a currency government does not have any control over. In this debate, we'll be speaking about why we discourage the use of cryptocurrencies. Now I'll be moving on to my arguments. Cryptocurrencies are so unstable. One week a person could be rich, and next week could be poor. The government stands responsible for this by the pledge they took in the start, by getting elected. So they are responsible. The second speaker, the DPM, will be elaborating on which principle is applied. Cryptocurrencies are a bubble. Now I am going to focus on that. The same thing happened around 2007 2008. People were obsessed with the real estates and were investing in it relentlessly. And the companies started providing people loans with low interest and providing the loan to people without a secure job. And as soon as the bubble burst, the real estate bubble, the people stopped paying back the companies and the market fell down a huge time. Due to this, many people committed suicide because of the pressure. So if we keep adding air to this crypto bubble, it's going to burst and very badly. Secondly, I am going to mention why is cryptos unstable. The government will lose hold because the government can control transactions with dollars, euros, and etc. But with inception of bitcoins, the government loses control over the currency system. And due to decentralization, as Bitcoin like underlying technology does not allow any central authority for any transaction, due to and moving on to like it's connected. Secondly, due to decentralization, more and more criminals are using Bitcoin as a viable method for illegal activity. Cyber criminals are using this Bitcoin platform to steal money from users. Many drug-related criminals are using the Bitcoin network to trade drugs. Also, people have done so many crimes by stealing money by Bitcoins and stuff. They have like stolen about 1 billion since 2021. Imagine that. And the government controls the country's economy with the help of central banks and financial institutions. After Bitcoin has become a mainstream, many central banks have lost their business, which is eventually a loss to the government. The value of Bitcoin is not stable, and it is hard to use a currency that does not have a stable value. It could go down or up or God knows where. So yes, Bitcoins are unstable. With this, I want to say that cryptos are very unstable. So if you keep feeding the fire fuel, it is just going to rage on, and it's going to harm you in there, like the bubble of the real estate did. And I will take in
POI.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So you talk about how cryptocurrencies are unstable, but then aren't markets like the stock markets and then the rupee also unstable because their prices fluctuate?
Yes, but how can you say that Bitcoins are not unstable? And yes, I agree that stock markets are unstable, but there is a single like a point chance that we can like predict where it's going to go. If you have smarts to do that, a person can only like invest in Bitcoins or like stock markets if he has the sense of sensibility that you will lose money in that. You will have this problem. So yes, I hope that answers your POI. Are there any others? So I'll be resting my case now. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for that speech. Inviting the first speaker from opposition to start their case here.
Can I have 30 seconds to prepare rebuttals?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'll just set up my timer. Okay. So my time starts in 3, 2, 1. In a world where economies are falling, entire countries are collapsing, and people are suffering, does the government really have the right to selfishly revive the economic pain of their citizens? This is precisely why I, Vedant, will be going for today's motion. This House believes that government should take public steps to disrupt and discredit the use of cryptocurrencies. Through this debate, we will talk about two main arguments. Number one, innovation through these cryptocurrencies, and number two, the benefits of decentralization in these countries. Let us begin by defining the status quo. As defined in our impact statement, today's world is not really doing the best economically as currencies fall harder than ever before. Countries are having a harder time dealing with their overall state money wise than ever before. This is seen in developing countries across the globe, like India, Pakistan, and Vietnam, where prices of poverty are increasing exponentially, something which we will be elaborating on in throughout this debate. It is also important to realize that it is in these countries that have been facing economic downfall that cryptocurrencies have emerged. Cryptocurrencies have expanded in countries like India and Pakistan, where they've expanded by over 600% and 700% respectively. This essentially means that there is a demand, a want for cryptocurrencies, and cryptocurrencies are a way for people to vent out all the, is a way for people to regain their state economically and to also benefit themselves. Now let us go into the rebuttals. Team Proposition comes up to us and says the cryptocurrencies are extremely unstable and that governments are responsible for this. But what they fail to realize is that virtually every market in today's world is some amount of instability linked to it. For example, the Indian rupee consistently falls and rises throughout the year. Same with stock markets, where the prices of these stocks fluctuate exponentially. There is not much difference between the stock market and the cryptocurrency market if you're looking at rises and falls, because both rise and fall like consistently, and both have some amount of risk involved in them. Then we talk about how cryptocurrencies are a bubble set to explode, and once there is a lot of demand, people are going to buy. This is something that we will be elaborating on throughout our model during this speech. So we will be doing this after the rebuttals. Then after that, we talk about how government loses controls over the currency and how due to decentralization, more and more criminals use cryptocurrencies. This is additionally something we will be talking about during our speech. Then many central banks have lost their businesses due to cryptocurrency. They haven't really explained how these central banks have lost their position, and many central banks still exist. Money in a tangible, in like the real life form, still does exist and still is used widely, and therefore I don't think it is logical that these central banks have lost their business due to this cryptocurrency. So in this debate, we aim to allow governments to regulate the market as they do with every single one, just not allow them to actively throw harms at these currencies. We believe that taxation should be allowed for the government, and as the government's goal with taxation is to keep people safe, not to discourage people from using these cryptocurrencies. Additionally, the government needs to have a certain amount of regulation in these markets to protect their citizens as opposed to suppressing their desires to start the ventures in this market. An example of this is how the government stresses on free trade, stays in the market, and has regulations to protect citizens from coercive and harmful decisions in the market. Additionally, we believe that this debate is about whether cryptocurrency is a good area for barter in the economy. So, to expand on our first argument, cryptocurrencies have acted as a catalyst to increase the popularity of previously underrated technologies. For example, technologies like the metaverse, NFTs, blockchains have flourished off of the exponentially expanding cryptocurrency market. This is good because number one, with new cryptocurrencies coming out, there is an increase in competition, which is proportional to an increase in the development of these technologies. When these technologies are further developed, it allows for our world to grow exponentially too, which further spurs economic activity of the world and individual countries. Number two, these technologies are key to promoting the development of the world and are currently extremely beneficial to many countries. An example of this is how India's Niti Aayog is using the blockchain network to protect important documents. Additionally, in a world where monopolization of currency isn't good because there isn't really much innovation and competition, and in a world where real life money is the main form of barter and trade, we believe that cryptocurrency is a way to increase the amount of innovation and technology. It is important to note that cryptocurrencies have many currencies involved in them, and because of this, there is more chances that these technologies are going to be going up against each other. These cryptocurrencies are going to be going up against each other. And because of this competition, these technologies will flourish exponentially because of the development. Now, on to our second point about decentralization. It is important to note that the blockchain is essentially a system where people get to see the cryptocurrency logs openly and get to see where money is being transferred. That is basically how the blockchain works in a nutshell. So the benefits of decentralization in the world is number one, it allows these people to keep their money theirs, and it allows additionally these people to grow their money on their own. Secondly, if you're looking at this from the perspective of the countries, it prevents corruption. It makes it easier to detect corruption through these cryptocurrencies, and additionally makes it easier for these governments to stop corruption and any other illegal activities that the side proposition has mentioned throughout their speeches, like criminal activities, drug sellers, etc. So essentially, when the government gets control, when the government sees that the blockchain is being decentralized, they get to see that this decentralization essentially helps these people control their money, and it essentially helps the government. It essentially helps the government know about corruption that is going on in their country. So for these reasons, I rest my case and I urge for a con ballot.
I thank the speaker for that wonderful speech. Before we move forward,
I'll just take 30 seconds to prepare my points. Okay, I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. What gives a person happiness is success and stability. Cryptocurrency equals to instability and volatility. The price of Bitcoin has gone down from 69 million to 17 million. If that isn't scary and unstable, I really don't know what is. 3 things from my speech. Firstly, why the comparative is much worse. Second, stock markets are different from cryptocurrency. And third is my substantive argument to further our own case. After identifying that the main aim of this debate is to bring happiness to most people through stability, since this is obviously unique for the proposition and opposition doesn't have the monetary stability in citizens, proposition already wins this debate. Let's look at point number 1. Why really is the comparative worse? The opposition refuses to address the fact that numerous cryptocurrencies are unwilling to sell, refusing to trade, and even countries banning it. The market itself is collapsing. Why does the opposition want to support something that is falling? I really do not understand this. The leader of opposition stated that cryptocurrency has a demand due to economic crisis. Cryptocurrency is way too unstable to use to vent out. It is not something which we can use and replace gold with. The opposition talked about how many things are unstable, but never really responded to the point that cryptocurrency is as well unstable and bad. You have not denied our main claim in this debate, which is to show why instability leads to unhappiness for many people. And you have not denied our claim of why cryptocurrency is unstable. Opposition also talked about competition, but I really don't see how this is in any way relevant to this debate, so I'll not be rebutting this point. Next, you talked about decentralization, but you really don't understand what decentralization is either. Decentralization is where the government doesn't have control of something. And you said that decentralization will lead to catching of more corruption and we'll be able to catch more crimes. But this is actually the opposite. And I will be elaborating on this very point in my constructors. Second, let's go back to the POI. First, opposition asked first proposition, the thing about stock markets and how it might be volatile as well. But the fact is that cryptocurrency is completely unstable and unpredictable. The stock market is like a game. It's not unstable, but it has mind to it. We can use logic to figure out what's going to come next. It's like business. If you say the stock market is unstable, can't you say that anything in the entire world is unstable? The opposition also stated about how many things are unstable, giving the rupee as another example. Do you really think that cryptocurrency and world currencies like the rupee are even in the same league? The rupee changes by about $0.2 in the whole year at the maximum, while cryptocurrency can change by over $50 million in the same year. Now, this point is completely ridiculous. Moving on to my substantive argument about how the government can't control cryptocurrencies and also why that's bad. Two reasons about why the government can't control cryptocurrency. First, cryptocurrencies are decentralized. What do we mean by this? Cryptocurrency does not allow any central authority to control transactions. This means that there is no accountability for transaction and there is limited information about the seller and buyer. Second, there is no way to revive cryptocurrency when it crashes. What does this mean? Crash in cryptocurrency like Bitcoin is due to all the instability in the world, like the Russia-Ukraine war, inflation, recession, and the stock market crash. The government can fix all these things by reducing and increasing bank loan interest prices. But this economic crisis of cryptocurrency is not connected to any economic factors. Hence, there is no real way to reverse this crash. This in turn justifies why the government can actually disrupt and discredit the use of cryptocurrency. Here, we can also see the principle of responsibility and how the government does have the responsibility to inform and educate the people of what could bring them harm. It is their responsibility to at least tell them, inform them, and show them why cryptocurrency is bad. Yes?
Won't the principle of responsibility stand on side opposition with the government regulating cryptocurrency in order to incentivize it, but further to protect people from its harms?
No, the government cannot actually regulate cryptocurrency if you don't think it is bad at all. As your first proper opposition speaker already said, they don't like cryptocurrency and think it's not unstable. You clearly stated why cryptocurrency is actually good, but you never said you want to regulate it. I end my speech by saying, what gives people happiness is success and stability. Cryptocurrency doesn't give a person stability. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for that speech. Anna, do you want to say something?
Ma'am, I'd like to invite the second speaker from the opposition for the debate.
Right, I'll just take 30 seconds to gather my notes and then to set up my time. All right, I hope I'm audible and visible.
Yeah, you are.
Perfect. Perfect. I'll be taking POIs in the chat box. If you have any, just write POI in the chat and I'll take it. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel side proposition's entire case has been based upon a lack of characterization and understanding of what exactly cryptocurrency means, and also what exactly do we intend to do with it, and how do we actually intend to make it much more incentivized for the people to actually invest in, right? And to actually deal with this entire issue, I'll be providing 3 key rebuttals in my speech. First being about why is taxation crediting crypto, and why exactly does it solve all the issues that side proposition has pointed out, and why is it again possible to do so. Secondly, in regards to the funding of terrorism and all these other harm that has been presented by the first speaker of side proposition, and how it somewhat is irrelevant to the debate. But thirdly, in regards to the entire argument about central banks, how do we deal with it, decentralization at large and this very principle, and another argument constructed to a case in regards to what exactly is the beneficial mitigant that is present on our side for nations and also for individuals of particular nations at large. Then coming over to the first rebuttal that we have, why is taxation crediting crypto? Panel, I understand that this is directly rebutting all the points in regards to incentivization and why the government cannot do it in the very first place by the second speaker of side proposition, because we got this idea that, hey, look, taxation in this very first place is not possible on crypto in the very in one way. But secondly, if you're in any way whatsoever trying to incentivize crypto, you want to taxation, right? First of all, to the second argument given over here, two things to this. The two things that actually prevent people from investing in crypto currently is this belief that there is certain lack of security, but also that there is no government regulation present over here. We think that the moment we're able to establish both of these scenarios in our side of the house, by furthering government regulation, by furthering government laws to actually incentivize people to participate in crypto currency at large, we're able to actually argue the fact that we're incentivizing people and we're securing people to be a part of this tender, to actually ensure that they're able to participate in it, because they feel that there is some sort of a mitigating factor. But also note, panel, that cryptocurrency in itself provides a certain amount of transparency into it, right? The very way banking systems currently work in the country is that they do not provide you any amount of transparency because of the presence of a third person, right? The cryptocurrency though provides you a transparency level when you're able to see the amount of investment that you've done, and you're also able to see your money going from one place to another. We think that this in itself ensures that there's an amount of security in regards to investment and also protection of interests of consumers, which would ensure that people would want to participate in such a particular currency, right? But then again, upon the principle of responsibility, we feel that this principle of responsibility lies on our side more, because if the entire global world is going to participate in one particular currency, it is obviously bad for these people to actually not participate in it just because its government is not able to take enough principle of responsibility over here, right? Because what does principle of responsibility mean in the very first place? Principle of responsibility is not limited to restricting individuals from actually doing trade in any way whatsoever. It actually extends to securing individuals and to make sure that these individuals are safe and their interests are safe when they're participating in the globalized world. We think then that this principle of responsibility is present much more on our side of the house, and this government participation will be further present, and it will actually incentivize the government to go ahead and to be able to actually and to be able to actually push forward interests of the people at large and to make them a part of the globalized market, which is something that I'll be emphasizing over in my argument as well. But note then that this is an direct response to the entire principle that they try to slip in through the second speaker, right? But secondly, to the argument of, let's say, funding of terrorists, etc., we think that this argument is very, very weird in the very first place. Understanding that major funding of terrorists is actually happening through, let's say, the Halal network in present in Afghanistan, etc. We think that then this funding of terrorists is somewhat present on both sides of the house, and we do think that there is some way to actually control it because of the level of transparency that is present on crypto. But secondly, understanding that still this would be, even in the worst case, this would still be present over there, and this is present over on their side of the house as well. You cannot ban a tender because of the fact that it is being used by someone, right? And that we think that there are alternative measures to actually check on it. The alternative security measures that are actually present would actually be able to solve this entire issue. We do not think that that this should be credited much in the debate, understanding this is at max a wash. But coming to the third thing then, that crypto over central banks, right? And understand this is also connected to my constructor. So we'll have to kind of analyze a lot in this, right? That why is crypto better than central banks at large? Two key reasons for this. First is decentralization. I'm really sorry. Just I'm really sorry. Can I just continue from here? I think there is a issue over there.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm perfect. How much time is left?
I wasn't necessarily timing you this time, but then if you were timing yourself.
Yeah, I was most probably on 4 minutes 20 seconds, if that makes sense.
There were 2 minutes left.
4 minutes? So I'm sorry?
There were 2 minutes left.
2 minutes left, right? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So right, continuing from where I left, why is crypto better than central banks then? Two key reasons for this: decentralization, and secondly, the level of transparency that they occur. But also, thirdly, an analysis of why they push forward the idea of individual over government, and that why in developing and underdeveloped conditions that's actually good. First, over to the idea of decentralization, it is able to provide further faster transactions without operational cost, right? Note that the entire rebuttal side proposition has already given to decentralization are vague at best and not provide enough characterization, because they're not able to tell us that why they would be able to provide much more further investments through central banking in the very first place. B, they're not able to provide a comparative between the two, and also C, they're not able to tell us that why this decentralization is necessarily so bad that people would lose money in the very first place, right? We're able to tell you that decentralization A would work with transparency, which is already present in cryptos, right? Because they're taking both these, they're not taking one principle at all, and they're taking this very action in a solitary manner, right? Because decentralization at the end of the day, even in the most way and worst of cryptocurrencies, is actually used with a combination of transparency. How is this the case? They first provide you faster investment without any sort of operational cost. We think that there's for further level of transparency the moment a middleman is reduced and removed from this entire transaction, which means that they're able to incentivize people to actually go forward and invest more. But B, that it also ensures much more investment for entrepreneurs at large, and understanding that they're able to prevent themselves from being affected from inflation, etc., and things like that. This is something that was given by a post speaker also. It hasn't been rebutted yet, and thus it still stands in debate. Further on, understand this level of transparency and why is it not present on their side of the house, right? Understand that the banking systems currently work upon the idea of secured networks, which is already and only understood by banks in itself. We think that it becomes really difficult for consumers then to actually understand the movement of money that is going from one place to another, and to actually ensure that their investments are done in a proper and fashion, right? This means then that this level of transparency is able to ensure individual interests at large, but also is able to ensure that these people are able to, let's say, participate much more in regards to investing, to get much more credit, cheaper credit, because of the lack of official and operational costs as well. Then comes the entire argument about, look, you're actually removing the idea of central banking systems, and that how this is actually harmful to the government at large. Even if we take the best case scenario into this, and let's say that yes, we are removing central banking systems at large, something which is actually not happening in the case of developed countries, understanding the amount of central banking systems being able to still withstand the cryptocurrencies, but also the very need of central banking systems as alternative fixtures for a lot of situations, whether it be for a large amount of loans, etc. We think that it's still important to understand that why central banking and that why the very prevalence of cryptocurrency over central banking systems is important for developing and underdeveloped countries. Two key reasons for this: there's a lack of space in global markets at large for developing and underdeveloped countries to actually flourish, which means that they're not able to actually sort of establish their foothold and are able to withstand the very influence of inflation. This might look like smaller countries like Ghana not being able to stand the very inflation that has happened due to the Russian-Ukrainian crisis, but them being able to actually establish some sort of a mitigation factor through the presence of cryptocurrency. What does then this look like? This looks like individuals trying to still invest in the global markets, trying to still buy products through the money that they receive from cryptocurrency, but also that they're able to find an alternative to banking structures. right? Understand the very nature of cryptocurrency in the very starting has been to be established as an alternative to banking structures. This alternative to banking structures then ensures that in developing and underdeveloped countries, wherein there are not efficient banking structures to actually handle the very impact of inflation, or banking structures which are not present at all, or let's say weaker banking structures with overburdened loans from smaller entities, we think that then it becomes so much more important for this alternative to be present, to establish trade, and to also make sure that irrespective of the location that you are in and irrespective of the economy that you are present in, individual benefit is not let's say removed in the very scenario, right? But we do think that the very reason individual benefit is established in the very first place, it is going to end up causing national economic benefit at last, and we think that that is the benefit that we want to propose, and we want to establish on our side of the house. So we're very, very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that speech. I'm calling for the third speaker from the proposition.
Am I visible and audible?
Yes.
I'll be taking my POIs verbally, and I'll be beginning on the backward count of 3, 2, 1. Good morning, good evening, panel. In my speech, I will be first of all covering rebuttals for the first and second opposition speakers' arguments. Second, I'll be doing a clash analysis and proving why we won the debate. And third, proving why our side has definitely won this debate. First of all, going with the rebuttals. The first speaker completely flipped sides during the debate. They said that cryptocurrency is bad and needs to be stopped. And then at the end bit of the debate, they started talking about decentralization, which the opposition has completely failed to understand this concept. The entire case of the first speaker has been completely fallen apart, like mentioned a lot of times by a second speaker. This entire debate is that this house believes that motion, and this means you need to assume feasibility. This was mentioned in the characterization of our first speaker as well. In this debate, we need to assume that governments can control cryptocurrency to an extent, right? But this has completely been disregarded by the first and second speaker's arguments. The first speaker also mentioned that Niti Aayog uses crypto to protect important documents. Two rebuttals to this. First of all, RBI, which is again in India itself, the entire National Bank of India, the one India completely uses, they themselves said that crypto is bad and therefore they've banned it. There's some merit to their argument. There is some merit to why they've banned this. Why do you think they've done this? There's always harm in cryptocurrency, right? You can't take one part of the Niti Aayog is using cryptocurrency while completely disregarding this second segment where India is actually against cryptocurrency. RBI is against cryptocurrency. Second of all, there was a major incident recently where a lot of important documents that were protected by cryptocurrency themselves have been leaked. This entire incident was called Pandora's Box 2.0. Cryptocurrency, therefore, is not at all safe. It's not a safe method for people to store their important sensitive data. Then there was an entire clash about why stock market is not stable. And cryptocurrency is not either. Okay, so first of all, cryptocurrency is completely unstable. Someday you might have some Bitcoin that's worth buying a very big thing such as a house. Second day, that same Bitcoin might not be enough to buy a loaf of bread or a piece of chocolate. Stock market is not that unstable, like mentioned so many times by our second speaker as well. The stock market is dependent on external factors as well, such as the amount of shares a particular company has, the bonds. But cryptocurrency, for example, there is no way to predict what's going to happen next. Stock market, there's still a specific algorithm, there's a logic which can be used to predict what happens next, what the up and downs of the market are. But there's no such thing to do this in cryptocurrencies, especially in developing countries where the entire point of citizens is that citizens are trying to find stability in their life, they're trying to achieve happiness. Cryptocurrency completely goes against it. The entire idea of cryptocurrency being unstable comes into picture in this. People are not able to achieve that financial stability which they are wanting to achieve in a developing country. Second speaker mentioned that there are preventive measures against their case. Now, what are these preventive measures? There was no argument at all made about this. There was no clarity in their argument. They said that they want to propose a new model, but this model has not been proposed yet. And we firmly believe that it's not going to be proposed later in this debate either, because there's only third and reply speaker left, and that's no time to propose a new model. Now I'll be giving my clash analysis. The entire debate the opposition has completely failed to understand the definition and concept of decentralization, which has been complete, which we have spoken a lot about in our first and second speech. The government decentralization basically means that government loses control of the monetary funds of a particular country, which means that they can't do good for their citizens, right? They can't do good for their nations, which is why they were elected. They want to improve the living conditions of a country. And if there's decentralization, which means they're not able to control this, there is no way to bring stability to the lives of citizens, right? So decentralization is very applicable on our side of the house, where it is completely disregarded on the other side. Now I'll be moving on to explaining why our side has definitely won this debate. Our characterization, the opposition mentioned a few times that there was hardly any characterization, although we mentioned a lot of characterization in our first and second speech, and this was wrapped around in our arguments as well. We mentioned that we'll be excluding CDBC, the central bank of cryptocurrency, of digital economy, the entire digital form of money. We said that we'd be excluding this, but the second speaker entire argument was about how the central bank of digital form of money is good and so on. Second of all, we mentioned a lot of times what decentralization is. The opposition completely disregarded this argument and gave their own definition, some random definition of decentralization, which nobody agreed to. Third of all, our status quo was about developing countries. In developing countries, there's so much instability. People are struggling to make ends meet. They don't have enough food. They don't have enough shelter to live. What are they going to get pleasure in gambling? Basically, what is cryptocurrency? You said that it's for pleasure. They want to they rant about it, and that's why they go for cryptocurrency. This is basically gambling. How is it any different from gambling? The first speaker mentioned that crypto is a way to regain money. Gambling is also, they think they're going to regain money, but they actually just they invest money, but they eventually just lose all of it. There are one or two cases in which they win a lot of money, but that's it. There's a very unlikely chance that they're going to win much more money. And so, like in gambling, there's no way to predict what's going to happen next. The second speaker mentioned that people want to participate in this activity, that there's so much transparency. People are able to keep track of their how much money they're investing. So smoking, a lot of people want to engage in this activity of smoking. Their government is literally mentioned on the boxes, smoking kills, but people still do it. There is an audience for this, but that doesn't mean it's good. Same with cryptocurrency, there is an audience, but that doesn't mean it's good. It's a government's moral obligation, it's their responsibility to help guide their citizens against this. They need to show the citizen their path against this wrong action about what cryptocurrency is. The entire point of cryptocurrency is wrong. That's why we are trying to disrupt and discredit it. How we're discrediting it and how we're disrupting it, we're trying to promote awareness using media, using news, social media handles about why cryptocurrency is bad. It's the government's moral obligation to protect citizens, and they need to do this in any way possible. Our side has definitely proved why responsibility is more relevant in this debate compared to the opposition side. There are so many cryptos that are falling apart. And why would the opposition anyway support a falling market? It's like saying smoking is deteriorating, but it's still not completely gone. But we can see that there's a negative incline towards this, right? That's like saying we're going to support smoking, we're going to support bad actions, we're going to support gambling. Happiness and stability, there's no principle about this on the opposition. Their entire case falls apart because this house believes that motion is about entirely about a clash between about principles, and we have definitely proved why responsibility in our side of the house is better achieved. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. I'm now calling the last speaker of the debate, third speaker opposition.
Just give me 30 seconds. Okay, so I'll begin my speech. Just a second. Yeah, I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Claims. Proposition in this debate has made claims. Claims that how banks will go bankrupt, claims that decentralization directly clashes with taxation and regulation that we're proposing, and claims that crypto is a market that is completely unpredictable and you cannot predict crypto at all. Claims that RBI has banned crypto, false claims with no characterization is the sum of their case in this debate. And the fact that their model uh, uh, for public discrediting of crypto came in the third speech just clearly shows that they've also strategically failed in this debate, and that is why we clearly won this debate. I'll be showing the sum of this debate using three major clashes and themes that occurred in this debate. Firstly, was about decentralization versus regulation. Secondly, about instability, and thirdly, about illegal activities. Firstly, talking about decentralization versus regulation, I think the meaning of decentralization has become extremely confused in their side of the world. Let me clarify for you what decentralization in its essence is. Decentralization doesn't mean that the center won't be able to regulate. In the blockchain terminology, or in the terminology of cryptocurrency, it basically means that your normal money or your normal currency, your government is the distributor there, right? The government distributes money um, through the RBI to different people. However, and the government is the creator of this. However, decentralization in terms of cryptocurrency just means that here the government isn't distributing money like they do in official currency, um, but it is a currency in which it's a mass distribution. Now, it doesn't mean that government isn't able to oversee the transactions, right? In fact, it's easier for government to oversee transactions on our side of the world, as I'll be showing you um, through my rebuttals. Now let's talk about then decentralization versus regulation. As I've already defined decentralization, what we tell you on our side is decentralization because the government is able to oversee these transactions, and what crypto essentially does is that there are very transparent transactions. There are extremely transparent transactions, and they cannot be tampered. And also you can prevent corruption and black money. Why? Essentially because there's such transparent transaction and you cannot tamper the money here, right? And it could not, there are traces of your money cannot be removed, so the chances of having black money in the crypto market with regulation is highly unlikely. So if government can oversee these transactions, and in the status quo it's also taxing these transactions, the fact that government isn't able to regulate it is highly unlikely. So now what do they tell us about our point? They tell us that because of the government, they can tell us firstly because the government cannot regulate. Now firstly, as I've already told you, in the status quo the government is actually taxable, and because of transparent transaction and decentralization mechanisms, they're easier to regulate. I'm going to flip this and say that we actually get more regulation on our side of the world because um because the moment that the moment okay, so decentralization you do not have any middleman, and although the government isn't the distributor, the government is able to oversee these transactions, and that helps because it reduces black money, wherein you cannot remove your tracer or you cannot tamper with the money whatsoever, and thus it's extremely easy for the government to regulate, right? um what uh, what do then what do they then tell us? That it's not connected, that there's a okay, now the second, moving on to the second theme about instability, right? What do they tell us about instability? They tell us that it is a very unstable market and government has the obligation to prevent individual loss of people. A couple of points to rebut this. Firstly, talking about stock markets. Stock markets are also very unstable. What do they as my first speaker already mentioned, what do they then rebut that by? They say that stock markets can be predicted to some extent and crypto can't, which is actually extremely untrue. The factors of economics still play a role in the crypto market and are actually very similar. Experts predicted that it would have a downfall and it's having a downfall right now. So I don't see their point about that it cannot be regulated at all, or that it can't be predicted at all, exists, because the basics of economics and the factors of economics relating to the market still apply to crypto. But even secondly, if people do it on their own risks, right? People do it on their own risk. So if you ban anything that has a chance of having a risk in it, then the government would practically be banning everything. But also, even in their best case, let's say that it's extremely unpredictable, and it's extremely extremely risk taking, and it's going to lead to a lot of risk factors. But also, it's extremely important to note that in developing countries, especially as they've mentioned, only a few people invest in crypto, right? We're not talking about masses or middle class people or poor class people who form the majority of your developing countries that actually invest in crypto. Even though they don't even know what crypto means. So your few high class people are actually the ones invested in crypto who are the discussion of this debate right now. They're rich people, they're considerate people, right? So even the financial risk that they face isn't going to have a huge impact on that, isn't going to have a huge impact on their instability of their life, that's going to like reduce their happiness or anything, because they did it on their own. They did it on their own say. So the principle of responsibility then it just doesn't play here, because the government does not firstly has the principle to regulate individual investment, and also only a few people are investing. So the risks that go on with it isn't going to change the market or change so all these is going to affect the population and the masses so much in terms of their money, that the government has to pay attention to this. But also thirdly, the government has a greater principle of choice to allow these people to invest in whatever they want to invest in. And the fact that it is falling or that it is rising isn't the problem of the government here. Now, then we talked about third, moving on to the third theme about it leading to illegal activities. Firstly, it's extremely inexclusive, because they never deal with the fact that black money, corruption, money laundering, etc., also exists on their side of the world, right? All of these things actually do exist on their side of the world, and it's actually so even with or without crypto, these things are going to exist either ways. But also, I'm going to flip this and say that it becomes but that these illegal activities become less prominent on our side of the world. Let's imagine, because the moment that the government is able to actually regulate and oversee these transactions, I've already mentioned, it reduces corruption and black money, because these cannot be tampered with, and these transactions are actually transparent. Then they talk about, oh, banks have lost their jobs. What? That's extremely untrue, because I've already mentioned only a very few class people are actually investing in crypto. So banks are actually extremely needed in our in our side of the world as well. So the fact that banks are going to go bankrupt is just irrelevant, right, in this debate. But then what do we tell you that was completely um, not rebutted from their side of the world? We tell you about how it increases development, right? It increases innovation and technology. We tell you about how this decentralization helps in transparent transactions, etc. We also tell you about how it also benefits the government and overall economy. The points that that do not go rebutted by them. So the fact that their side was based on claims of instability, claims of illegal activities, claims of that decentralization would not lead to regulation. And because of no characterization of these claims, they have clearly lost this debate. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for that wonderful speech. Nishka, are you ready for the reply speech?
Right, I'll just need 30 seconds because I just lost my internet connection. I need to gather my thoughts.
Yeah, no problem.
Right. I'll just start my timer. I'll be starting in 3, 2, and 1. Good evening, everyone. As the reply speaker for a side proposition, I will be establishing the main clashes of debate and then going on to say how our side particularly won the debate, mainly because the opposition did not address some of the points that were made by our side. Right. Going on to the first point that was made by, I think, the leader of opposition, that the stock market is also highly unstable. This was also brought up by the third speaker. Right. We understand that, like, stock market is also highly unstable in the sense that prices to fluctuate in stock in itself is something that's regarded as unstable. What we need to understand, though, is that cryptocurrency is at its infant stage, as was already mentioned in our previous speeches, and stocks are something that are already established. They're like an established asset. So people will more likely go for stocks, and because they're more likely going for stocks, in the end, they're going to be less unstable than cryptocurrencies. Right. And then, well, the main model was that they will tax these people for cryptocurrency, and this will somehow incentivize people. Now, I would just like to say that taxation, especially on cryptocurrencies, will more likely disrupt them. So that's something that should come from our side of the house and not theirs, mainly because, well, they say that because right now they're not incentivized because there's a certain lack of security, there's no government regulation. Well, this is precisely the reason that some people invest in Bitcoin in the first place, so that they can exchange black money just in like the form of Bitcoin, because there are no government regulations, which I'll also be coming to later. So taxation, when you're telling people that you're going to be offering, like when you're going to be taking taxes from them when they invest into cryptocurrency, it's just going to like lessen the amount of interest that people have. So it doesn't work on their side of the house. Then there was an entire clash about the principle of responsibility. How we tell you that our principle of responsibility stands on our side of the house because the government needs to tell people how to make like more informed choices and better choices on our side of the house, mainly because, well, we're going to be like actively like collaborating and advertising data about how cryptocurrencies can be negative. To that, they say that the government should push the interests of the citizens, and that if the citizens want to do it, then they should be able to do it. We are not taking away that principle of choice anywhere, because we are not talking about banning. And I think this is something that the third speaker also talked about. We're not talking about exactly banning cryptocurrencies, we're just talking about discrediting them. So these people who will take risks regardless of whether governments will discredit them or not, they are the people that we can't really help on our side of the house or on your side of the house, Tabby. Now, the principle of responsibility stands because A, like I said, we're not actively banning crypto. And secondly, we're just like making data known to the public so people can make more informed choices about crypto, right? We're not refusing the principle of choice anywhere. Then a major part of the third speaker's speech was that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, they lead to more transparent transactions, less corruption, less black money. I would just like to say that even though like traces can't essentially be removed by people on, let's say, cryptocurrency sites and Bitcoin sites, what we need to understand is that, for example, when demonetization first came out, many people started investing in like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies only because they could just like exchange black money for Bitcoin, right? Because there is no physical storage space of this money. So that means that there is like less possibility of raids and such, right? So what exactly are we going to see? There's going to be like more transparency around side of the house with like a central banking system that's not going to be overthrown by like crypto in the first place. Because in the end, as mentioned in all of our speeches, cryptocurrency does not have the legal basis and the legal authority as much as like central banking system does. And like I've already told you, like government regulations and taxation and how that won't work. So yes, very proud to propose.
And I'm speaking, I'm sorry, like I thought Nishka was off reply and it was supposed to be prop reply. Okay, so Nishka, you were supposed to like go after the off reply, but it was my mistake. I'm really sorry. I thought you were off reply. That's why I said Nishka, are you ready? Okay, so is off reply ready now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just set up my timer. Okay, so my time starts in 3, 2, 1. In a world where economies are falling, entire countries are collapsing, and people are suffering. Once again, does the government really have the right to selfishly revive the economic pain of their citizens? Let us go on to the clashes. Let us see what team proposition has told us throughout this debate. We win on developing countries because while they talk about how it overthrows the banking system and how it entirely harms the government, they fail to take into picture that these countries, the countries they want to focus on, don't have proper banking systems. Let us take examples of countries with high inflation levels like Venezuela and Zimbabwe. What is going on in these countries? Essentially, these countries' banking systems aren't able to handle the copious amounts of inflation in the economy, and because of this, the prices of the notes are decreasing. The legitimacy of the economy is decreasing, and people won't invest in their country. What essentially does this mean for the people of that country? Well, with no stable economy, they can't buy basic items, and even some of their biggest notes, their $1 trillion note, their $1 billion note, are considered worthless within hours. Now let's see what happens when you bring in cryptocurrency to the picture. Essentially, cryptocurrency is a currency that replaces the entire banking system in the countries which lack it. This is why cryptocurrency is good, because cryptocurrency essentially allows you to have a certain amount of money, transfer certain amounts of money from person to person, while not actually having them in your pocket. What does this mean? Because then with cryptocurrency, you don't actually have currencies falling out within 2 hours of them being actually imposed. You don't have the $1 billion note from Zimbabwe becoming worthless in literal minutes. While our side shows you that cryptocurrency indeed is, while their side shows you that cryptocurrency is volatile, we do accept that cryptocurrency is volatile. But then again, are the stock markets of these countries volatile? Are the economies, are the currencies of these countries volatile? If you put up Zimbabwe's economy, and then you put up Zimbabwe's notes and their inflation when compared to cryptocurrency and how their prices dropped when compared to cryptocurrency, you'll see that the drop in cryptocurrency is way less than the drop in the currency's worth in the countries like Zimbabwe and Venezuela. What does this mean? For these countries, cryptocurrency is one of the only viable methods to be earning, one of the only viable methods to sustain their livelihoods. If side of proposition is trying to tell you that these countries, these important developing third world countries, are benefiting on their side of the house, I don't think that's right, because throughout the debate, we have proven to you how our side is the side that benefits these countries the most, and how our side helps these countries grow out of their economic crisis. They have hardly contested our points about innovation, and they hardly have tackled our point on innovation and how in the cryptocurrency market, where there are tens, thousands of cryptocurrencies, where there is so much innovation and technology, because of the amount of competition, wouldn't we want to live in a world where there is more innovation and technology and where our world is more tech ready, as opposed to a world in which you have physical currency, where there's one main currency, the US dollar, no competition, and then you have no other innovations, technologies around this real life currency? Which world would you rather live in, Judge? A world which is economically stable, a world which has better technology, better innovation, or the world team proposition shows you a world where you stick to this in real life currency, in a world with little to no innovation surrounding these currencies. Additionally, we've covered the monopolization about one currency and how it isn't good in today's world, where we're supposed to be innovating and creating competition to fuel our technology. Now let's go through the points that they've thrown at us throughout this debate. Number one, they talked about how cryptocurrency is unstable and volatile, something we've tackled several times by showing them examples of how even stock markets and entire currencies themselves are even more their prices are dropping even more than the prices of cryptocurrencies themselves. Then we talk then throughout our speeches we have talked about the idea of decentralization and how Team Proposition's idea of this decentralization is flawed on many levels. First off, when you have decentralization, you have more transparency. Why is this transparency good? Number one, people can see where their money is going and what people are doing with their money. They can see how these transactions work. And additionally, it makes the entire system more transparent, which is good on whole other levels. Then second, it uncovers corruption and black money marketing, which essentially means that countries can look at the data, they can regulate the data, and then they can find out where these cryptocurrencies are going. Essentially, we have explained throughout our speeches that a blockchain is essentially a list through which one can see where one transaction is going, where. So, if countries are able to see this, and through our model, if countries are able to regulate the cryptocurrency market, then essentially it allows them to have a stronger foothold on this market and to see where all of the criminal money is going. Now, they've talked about how our idea of this regulation is entirely volatile and how it is not good. But then we have shown you how we have the right through this motion to allow the government to have some amount of control in the cryptocurrency market, like they do in every other market. We have allowed the government to do taxes, which essentially legitimizes the cryptocurrency markets in the eyes of the citizens. And it essentially gives these third world countries another source of income. The taxes from all the cryptocurrency traffic that their citizens are creating, it gives this third world country a way to avoid all the economic pressure and suffering. For these reasons, we urge a con ballot. If you want the lives of people in these third world countries to improve, vote con. If you want more innovation and technology in the future, vote con. Thank you.
All right, I thank everyone for that wonderful debate, virtual crossovers. Now me